Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
Our early morning guest from Staten Island, of course, is Darwin Porter. Good morning, Darwin.
ANITA, and welcome to the last days of autumn.
So is it cold there up in New York?
Yes, it is. I'm shivering right now.
Are you? Oh, that's
Yes.
too bad. Oh.
But I'll get used to it, okay?
Yeah, because I know you didn't like, well, did you like the heat?
Yes. You see, I remember. I'm
Right, you're
really
from
a
Florida.
boy
I know.
Who wandered into Yankee country.
I know. Well, one day maybe you'll get smart and come down here and live where I am.
Oh, God. I'd love that. ANITA, I have a broadcast for us this morning.
Okay. Waiting.
First, you and I made radio broadcasting history late in 2011.
Yeah.
When we were the first to go on the air and broadcast the story of Scotty Bowers, who died this week at the age of 96. He's been featured in 200 newspapers across America. The New York Times gave him an 8-page spread, but we went on the air before he published his groundbreaking revelations in a book called Full Service, which pertained to a gasoline station. Now, for those who don't know who Scotty Bowers is, I could quickly review him in a nutshell. His revelations have almost led to many of those celebrity books written about Hollywood stars, as they just simply were mythology, and Scotty set the record straight. And his story began when, as a Marine, he returned from World War II and started working in a gasoline station on Hollywood Boulevard. And 1946, which was the first year the baby boomers were starting to come into the world, their fathers had plenty of time, because in 1946 there was massive unemployment. Millions of men were returning from the European theater and from the islands of the Pacific, and most American factories had not reverted to they were munitions, and they hadn't reverted to domestic products like cars in Detroit. And so a lot of GIs were just out of work. And Scotty was pumping gas for a man who arrived in a shiny Lincoln and asked to have his tank filled up. And he turned out to be the famous movie star Walter Pidgeon.
I remember him.
And Walter Pidgeon asked Scotty, it was a very hot day, about 95 in Hollywood. He asked him if he would like to come by for a swim. And he said he would love to. And he arrived, and Walter Pidgeon introduced Scotty to his friend and suggested that he go in swimming. And Scotty said, I don't have any trunks. And Mr. Pidgeon said, well, you don't need them here. We're all men. And so Scotty left the next morning with a $20 bill. Of course, $20 was more valuable in 1946. And that began a service that he started performing, which branched out to include some of the most famous names in the world. I'll name drop a bit. He found many of his Marines started hanging out at the gasoline station. So he said, would you like to go over and spend the night with Cary Grant and his lover Randolph Scott? Or would you like to do this, or would you like to do that? And Scotty often rented himself out to, for example, he tricked with Spencer Tracy, and then he met Katharine Hepburn, and he said that over the years he supplied 150 women to Miss Hepburn, but she always sent them back if they had a blemish on them. Now, you and I not only did the first broadcast on Scotty. Incidentally, he's also the subject of a film now, Scotty and the Secret History of Hollywood, which was released in 2017. But the Boomer Times was the first to run the first story of Katharine Hepburn. Now, Miss Hepburn now, I got outrage from people. But now it's, the New York Times did 2 stories on Hepburn. She's been featured in newspapers. She's been talked about on The View, a television show that's very popular with women in the morning. You may have seen it
yes.
from time to time.
Oh, yes.
And it's now sort of common knowledge, but the Boomer Times was the first to come out, and my book on Hepburn was widely attacked, but now it's gospel. By the way, none of these revelations has destroyed any of my books. I'm happy to tell you that. In fact, I got the story right. But so many, I was looking at, I have huge celebrity chefs, and so many of the books are now wrong. Let me give you an example. First, people write about these Tracy and Hepburn, the great love affair. Well, they were great friends, but that's called a platonic relationship. And George Cukor, their best friend, once talked to me about it. Tracy lived in a cottage on his property, and he, of course, knew exactly what was going on. But so did all of Hollywood. See, these secrets were known to me when I first hit Hollywood. In fact, my boss in television used to work for Cary Grant and Randolph Scott. He said they frequently entertained Katharine and her girlfriend. And this goes on, but as the word spread, like Laurence Olivier used his service, but then the women started, they wanted to get in on these Marines too, because most of the Marines were basically straight. And so Laurence Olivier had Scotty arranged for him, but Scotty preferred to handle Miss Vivian Leigh herself. So he frequently visited her home, her temporary residence when Scotty said he went with men, but he much preferred women. And then he started moving up. And it is unbelievable, but it's not unbelievable to me. Some of his clients included the Duke and Duchess of Windsor when they visited Hollywood. Now, students of the Windsor know about this, but the Duchess preferred young girls and the Duke preferred young boys. So they were the great love affairs that he gave up a throne for, but he had other reasons for giving up that throne other than the love of my life. We've basically been fed propaganda. The studios were famous. They had publicity departments creating myths about the stars. For example, if a girl was a hooker in San Francisco and became a movie star, the publicity department made her a graduate of Berkeley who taught Sunday school.
Oh, my heavens. You know, I didn't introduce you properly. I'm going to just take a minute here to do that. We're listening. This is Darwin Porter, and he's calling in from Staten Island. And his latest book, Burt Reynolds, Put the Pedal to the Metal, how a nude, centerfold, sex symbol seduced Hollywood, is by celebrity author Darwin Porter and his co-author Danford Prince. And they have written so many books, as he was saying, and he has been the first to talk about things that I guess you've been doing this about 20-some-odd years with me, and people sit in their homes or sleep in their homes or lie in their beds, and they just have their mouths and anything else open because they can't believe what they hear. But as Darwin says, you know, he was the first for a lot of things. So if you want more information, you can actually go to their website, which is bloodmoonproductions.com. There, I did it. I wanted to do this. We always get started so soon, and I never tell people about you. But now you can continue. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I first met you when I came out with a book on Humphrey Bogart.
Yes, I remember.
And, I didn't get this from Scotty, but the Humphrey Bogart, and Ingrid Bergman made Casablanca, which in 1942, which many people consider the greatest film ever made. And at the time, Miss Bergman said, well, I made love to Mr. Bogart on screen, but personally, I didn't particularly like him. Well, many years later, when I was writing a book called From Sweden, I asked the tourist office if they would try to get me an interview with Ingrid Bergman, because she was back to Sweden, her native country, for she was at her vacation home. And they appealed to Bergman. They said, this man is promoting tourism to your beloved country. And they sort of had to talk her into it. But I found her delight. She served me a great big turnip for lunch, which is rather common, I found, in Scandinavia. I've never been served a great big turnip for lunch before. And so we talked about Casablanca, and she said, well, of course I didn't tell the truth. Bogey fell in love with me and wanted to marry me, although at the time he was married to his third wife, Maho Medhat, and this was before Lauren Bacall, and we had a torrid love affair that ended when Casablanca, like we parted and we said we would always have Paris, and that was the end of it. But she said, you have to realize we had to lie, because when stories of my infidelity later became known with Roberto Rossellini, it ruined my career. I was voting to step foot in Hollywood. But it was a different time. She said I was denounced from the Senate floor in Washington.
Is that
she
right?
said, I don't care now whether people know, but all those books about Bogart are wrong. I think he was more in love with me than I was in love with him, but I did not. I found him charming and admirable, but I was already married, and he was at the end of one marriage and about to meet Miss Bacall. So that sort of changed all those Humphrey Bogart books.
Well,
in a way, this is what Scotty is doing.
Wait, let me ask you something about Scotty. Was he attractive? He must have been. Describe him. Describe him.
In fact, I have a picture of him here, and he's with two hot blondes. He was about 6'2", blonde, strikingly handsome, and I don't know how to put this delicately.
Well built.
Yes, extremely.
Okay.
And suddenly and then he writes. He spent weekends with J. Edgar Hoover, who was a cross-dresser. His women's outfits provided by Ethel Merman, and all that appeared in my J. Edgar Hoover book. But you see, these stories were known, but I'll give you now. This couldn't happen today with the Me Too movement. If presidents like Bill Clinton or Donald Trump have affairs, we get details on them. But now, in the 60s, I used at the end of the workday, I went to a bar frequented by reporters from the New York Times. Now, often they talked about JFK and Marilyn Monroe, but nothing had appeared in the press at that time. Now books have been written on the subject.
Right.
So, in a way, the Kennedy-Monroe sort of ended an era, because with the advent of Richard Nixon, Moore, well, I almost have the feeling today you don't get away with anything.
That's true.
just turn on cable news.
Well, I just heard, too, this is horrible, but I can say it. I was listening about the states that don't approve of abortion and want to close all the centers, and that they actually, when women came in, they have a record of their menstrual cycles. Do you believe this?
Yes.
I mean, this is insanity.
If you're a great believer, if you're opposed to abortion, people take this very seriously. Although the people who are experts on population growth feel that sometime in this century, long after we've said goodbye, the population they may have to have better forms of birth control. But it's a very serious issue with people, and I notice some of the states have shot down the laws that will make it a criminal, meaning a doctor could be sent to jail for performing an abortion. But that's a horrible thing. Of course, back in the era of Scotty, there were many abortions, and I think he could have fathered a few children. But in those days, you crossed down to Tijuana. You drove down to Mexico, and for example, in New York, and this is coming up in my Lucy and Desi book, upcoming for next summer.
Oh, is that the next book that you're working on? I didn't know that.
No. It's the reason I brought it up is believe it or not, in this day we have to do things in advance to get in all the book catalogs. Oh. And it's due for an August release, but the catalog company copy was due yesterday.
Oh boy!
No. I'm involved with. You may never have heard of them, but Judy Garland and Liza Minnelli.
Yeah, right. I thought it was Judy Garland. That's what I've been saying, but I see. So you're just talking about this other thing coming up. Okay.
The Carrie Fisher, Debbie Reynolds went over big, so they wanted another mother and daughter book. And also, I don't know if you've had a chance to see it. The film Judy has
I
come
did.
out.
I saw it. I was going to talk to you about it, but I didn't want to disrupt what you came to decide to talk about. So this wonderful gentleman, Scotty Bowers, is now was just passed away, I gather. Is that why he was featured?
Yes. But the amazing thing is, he's being viewed now as the last vanishing figure of a bygone era.
I see.
Now, there are at least 300 people testifying to the validity. As I said, it was common knowledge. Like, for example, Rock Hudson became one of his best clients, but he started branching out, and not only women wanted his services, but men wanted him to arrange women for them. For example, we were just mentioning Lucille Ball. She ran into Scotty at the Coconut Grove, a famous nightclub in yesterday's Hollywood, and she slapped Scotty's face for supplying women to Desi Arnaz. And so Lucy knew what was going on, and so it became a big thing. Of course, by the advent of the AIDS era, he thought it was time to get out of that game. By the way, Scotty never charged for the people he sent out. He only charged for his services. Of course, his fee went up from $20 to $500. So, but he said basically he preferred women, and in fact, he ultimately ended up in a very, very happy marriage. But his wife just recently died. So, but the film is. For those who want to see it, the name of it is Scotty and the Secret History of Hollywood. And if you've got the right kind of TV channels, you can turn into it. And as I said, it will shock many people. And I think a lot of people just, even some update Hollywood biographers today who were born in the 1980s, one recently came out on Howard Hughes attacking my book and Scotty's book, because he also supplied young men to Howard Hughes, and about Katharine Hepburn was not a lesbian. Now, and she's saying that did not happen in 1932, but yet all of these witnesses, and we're talking hundreds, and so these young people who were not part of the era, but I think I mentioned my former boss ran the household and the private affairs of Randolph Scott and Cary Grant, and so I prefer to listen to the testimony of people who actually lived in that era.
Of
also,
course.
when I went to work in 1960, I was 21 years old on Madison Avenue, but nearly all the people were older than me. Of course, I only got in by a lucky break. I was much too young. And then I got to meet all these people and then we had offices in California, in San Francisco, and Los Angeles. And so what I am doing is verifying everything that Scotty said in that book. And I'm also happy that the very prestigious New York Times, they did 2 features on Scotty's book. Now, it's very rare in all these books being published to get reviewed at all in the New York Times, but to have 2 feature stories because he was backed up with a lot of credentials. I think it'll just take a minute, but I just want to read just 2 lines. They said, Scotty's story comprises an alternate history of Hollywood in the post-war period, correcting decades of, quote, straight washing, they call it, of the manufactured images of famous people. Scotty's personal history is an important corrective to a falsified historical record forged in a more repressive era. And it was repressive. I mean, for example, homosexuality was illegal. People actually, police raided private parties at private homes and arrested people.
Really?
Of course, African Americans had it rough, but they at least weren't illegal. And so you realize Scotty operated, all this had to be very secret and very hidden. Yet, back when I hit Hollywood, there were very few secrets. There are very few secrets today, but the difference being that suddenly you read about Dustin Hoffman. 20 years ago, he did something inappropriate, or today, like this, I forgot her name, this congresswoman who had to resign yesterday.
Oh, yes, right.
Yeah, I mean, they not only today have tabloid stories or stories in the major press, but they also have pictures of you. So we are living in a different time.
Yeah, and this was something that you, as much as you knew all the famous people and you were so involved, you've never become an egomaniac. Why is that?
Oh, I don't want to. I'm a very humble person.
You are.
Well, I'll tell you, I spent my life around movie stars, and I was always at parties and dinners. I was always the one person who didn't have any credentials.
Right. Yeah, right. That's
In other words, I was the only person there who was not famous.
Yeah, but you've done a lot with it, I'll tell you that much. And I'm so glad that now people understand that you really, and I'm going to use the word a genius in what you have accomplished. You are just, it's hard to describe you when I tell people, well, you have to listen to the show because this man is unique and he is friendly and kind and sweet. And now, of course, we never talk about and I guess we're going to run out of time. We have probably another, we have a little bit longer. But let me just say that your Airbnb, because you live in this famous home, which I've been privileged to stay with my husband, and it's been such a lovely relationship that we've had. But is the Airbnb making you happy?
Oh, well, that is not so much run by me, but
I know, but the people who come, are you happy with that?
I do get to meet incredible people.
Yeah.
Like a banker from Moldavia who told me the threat of his country, or Sandra Day O'Connor, the some of her best friends are people from Tasmania, so we could talk about that Tasmanian devil, Errol Flynn, who is still a big deal in Tasmania. and it's sort of it leads me into a whirl of incredible people, and often film people, and I feel a bit in touch with the world, because I used to be far more in touch in the world, running around Hollywood,
I know.
London.
You don't do that anymore, but let me ask you this. So your home is being used for a lot of films.
Yes.
Tell me why that's happened. I mean, I know your home is famous, but what's happened? All of a sudden it just got
I got this this agent who does nothing but film, and she was a friend of my publisher, Danforth Prince, and so one thing led to another, and it's turned out to be very interesting. It certainly put me in touch with a younger generation.
Yes.
Of course, I've expressed this, I think, on the show before. I'm horrified they've never heard of Betty Davis, Joan Crawford, Mae West, or I mean, but surely they must have heard of Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton, but I find they haven't. And I find in fact, I learned the new generation's name. I don't know if we discussed this. If you're born after 2010, it's now the Alpha generation. I didn't know that.
Right.
And,
well,
I get Generation Z mixed up with the millennials.
so
and then
all
I
of us
asked
do
for
that.
definition, and they're not even sure. But the only thing we know for definite is what a baby boomer is.
Yeah, that's true. Well, Darwin,
you know that because you're the world's expert on baby boomers.
Well, no, but I did see that seniors didn't want to be seniors. So they hid that, even though they were, and they preferred the term baby boomer, and so that's why we switched our magazine from senior to baby boomer. So it's really
Well, that is what it had, and it was Scotty began. That's where he came into prominence during all that era of when those returning GIs began having the people are listening to us now.
Yeah, that is something. So he died. You said he was in his 90s.
96.
96.
96.
And had you met him personally?
Oh, yes, because when he sort of, retired from the, I don't want to call it a pimp because.
No, I understand. Making acquaintances.
He became a bartender at Hollywood parties, at the chicest Hollywood parties.
Oh.
And that's where I got to talk to him and everything.
Oh, I knew you knew too much about him not to know him.
And he wanted, in fact, the reason that we got the broadcast first, he sent his book to Danforth Prince to publish it. And so it became a bestseller, by the way, on the New York Times bestseller list.
Oh.
But, okay, you say, why didn't we publish it? We didn't know if it would really go over that big. And they wanted a lot more money than we were prepared to pay.
I see.
It's one of the regrets of my life that we didn't get to do it, though. But who knew it? I didn't know the world would respond so favorably to it.
Well, I think what's happened is now of course, we know that people you even have a candidate running for president who is gay, and so things have changed a lot, haven't they, since you started writing?
Well, I'll tell you, I am terrified of the reaction to my Judy Garland, Lucille Ball, Arnaz, because they're not. There's certain stories about Judy Garland that many, many people don't know, but yet was part of her character. And I'm amazed how the Lucille Ball, Desi Arnaz true story has never been revealed. Let me put it this way. They weren't Lucy and Ricky Ricardo.
Oh, my. Well, let me just tell you that it's been just absolutely wonderful talking with you, Darwin. We've got a little extra time here, but thank you so much as usual. And I need to just take a little time and talk to you personally. It's never enough on the show. So thank you, and
we need to make a historic broadcast again like we did in 2011.
I think all our broadcasts are historic when it comes to you because we all learn things that no one else knows. But thank you, Darwin, so much. And give my love to Danforth.
Have a great show this morning.
Thank you so much, Darwin. Bye.